The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is a government agency that takes part in regulating lending institutions. Okay, so uh, banks, auto lenders, student loans, and so on. Uh, about a couple of years ago, everybody in the mortgage industry, so the banks and the lawyers and so forth, really started to um, feel the effects of the CFPB and some of its regulations. So I thought I'd make a short video just talking about what my experience has been with this. I don't want to get into the politics and the economics of it, just simply what I've experienced firsthand dealing with some of these regulations. And some of it's good, some of it's bad. First of all, probably the most noticeable negative effect is that the consumers or the borrowers now have fewer options. And in my opinion, the options are worse than they were beforehand. What's happened is a lot of the smaller lenders can't keep up with the regulations, with the CFPB regulations, with Dodd-Frank regulations, and they just simply get out of the business, um, or they merge with larger institutions. So just a couple of good examples. Hamden Bank was an excellent bank. They're a great bank to work with for mortgage lending, and they're now out of business. Okay, they merged with Berkshire Bank, which in my opinion is not as good of a bank. United Bank is another good example. They were an excellent small local bank. They've merged with a larger bank, and the quality of their services is nowhere near as good as it was beforehand. This has also happened amongst lawyers. All right, so um, a lot of small law offices have simply gotten out of real estate altogether. All right, the CFPB has required us to do a number of things which are very, very burdensome. All right, some of them make sense. For instance, they want us to have encrypted email, which is a good idea. Others don't make any sense. So, for instance, a law firm needs to have a manual for how it runs its business. Now, I guess if you're a large law firm, this makes sense, but for someone like me, it's just me. And yet I have a 50-page operating manual, which basically tells me how I run my business. Now, it sounds stupid, but the banks, before they'll allow me to do a closing, they'll want to see my manual and they'll go through it and they'll make sure that I have procedures in place telling myself what to do in certain scenarios. All right. So, so a lot of lawyers have just thrown up their hands and said, I'm out. I don't want to deal with this. And as a result of that, a lot of small lawyers, that people really like, can't handle the closings, and they need to go to these big law firms where the treatment isn't as good sometimes. Now, it's not all negative. Um, Now, you're dealing with these large institutions, and they really don't care if you have a gripe, okay? And they treat people like dirt sometimes. They even treat the lawyers badly. So what I've started doing, and I've encouraged other lawyers to do it, I encourage my clients to do it, the minute they start throwing their weight around and being unreasonable, these big banks, you can simply file a complaint with the CFPB, and you get almost an immediate reaction out of the bank. Um, Now, I don't know exactly what goes on after you file the complaint. The complaint is published, and within a couple of weeks, the CFPB will contact the bank with the complaint. Um, and I don't know what goes on after the fact. I just know when these banks get a little ridiculous with their demands and how they talk to people, I file the complaint, and they immediately change their tune, right? Which you sort of need when you're dealing with a large institution, right? You can't go to the the manager, like you could in a small bank, complain and expect it to have any effect, right? So that basically sums up my experience. First, there's fewer options, and a lot of small banks and small attorneys have been pushed out of the real estate business, all right, which is a disadvantage to the consumer. But at the same time, um, it gives consumers and gives lawyers, a weapon essentially to use against these large banks when they start to misbehave and get out of hand and treat people the way they shouldn't be treated.